Well, good morning. Welcome to this live sermon coming to you from Mount Vernon Presbyterian Church in Alexandria, Virginia on this Sunday, November 27th, 2022, the first Sunday in Advent. I hope you all had a wonderful and glorious Thanksgiving Day this past week. And now, as we step into the season of Advent and prepare for Christmas, I hope that your days will continually be full of great joy and peace. As always, if you are interested in finding out more about our congregation, you can scan the QR code, which is right here in our Facebook feed. There you will be able to go to a bulletin, and that bulletin has all kinds of announcements, links to a variety of different pages, and it will give you the opportunity to, again, stay in touch and become better aware of what's going on in the life of our church family. But now, as we prepare to hear from God, not from me, but from God, I invite you to take a couple of deep, cleansing breaths. Drop and roll back your shoulders to open your heart. Take another deep breath. Hold it. Exhale. And now begin to become attentive to that still small voice that is speaking to you today. When we gather in a couple of hours here at Mount Vernon, our first scripture reading will be from the Gospel of Matthew, and we'll tell the story of Joseph having a dream and being told in that dream not to be afraid to take Mary as his wife. Following that, the choir will sing White Christmas, a classic Christmas song. And both of those elements in worship today are designed to prepare us for this sermon. The first in a four-part series titled White Christmas. I invite you to join me now as we hear from God. Today, as we step into this season of Advent, just 1 week after Buffalo, New York had one of its worst snowstorms in decades, I will once again begin offering up my annual December prayers for a white Christmas here in Alexandria. The last one that I enjoyed was way back in 2009. When we were living in Williamsburg, Virginia. But even then, as beautiful as it was, it only lasted a day. And when I woke up on December 26th, it was all gone. It's one of the few things I actually miss about living in Western New York. Buffalo isn't known for much. In fact, a friend from high school sent me this meme last week that pretty much sums it up. It's a picture of just a white page with, I think you can barely make out a car there, and it says, "Come for the wings, stay because you can't find your car." Snow is everywhere. We do have the Bills in Buffalo, and so we're known for losing 4 Super Bowls in a row. The city was in the news back in May, but even then it was only because 10 people were tragically killed in a racially motivated shooting at a Tops supermarket. But other than that, Buffalo's only other claim to fame is its snow. And we saw that last week. But even last week's storm wasn't as bad as the one that took place 45 years ago this coming January, when over a 3-day period, the blizzard of 77 dropped 100 inches of snow in parts of western New York. Schools and businesses were closed for over a week, and as a kid, it was more than just memorable. It was epic. I was in 10th grade and will never forget that week. Buffalo actually averages more snow than Anchorage, Alaska. And so yes, my small hometown of Lewiston, just north of Buffalo, right up on the shores of Lake Ontario, almost always gifted me with a white Christmas. How many of you watching grew up with a white Christmas? How many of you would prefer not to ever see a white Christmas again? I know many fall into that category. So if that's where you are, then today let me put you on warning. Today my prayers begin. Not for the 6 feet of snow that Buffalo had 2 weeks ago, but just for a few inches this Christmas here in the DMV. You see, for me, something happens when it snows. Especially here, where it doesn't take much to bring things to a standstill. Snow forces cities and towns to slow down, to be still. And in those instances, in those precious moments, the peace that is of God, the peace that passes all understanding, becomes real. And this peace is Emmanuel. This peace is God with us. And this peace is what the first candle on our Advent wreath is all about. We will sing about it this morning in our opening hymn, O come, Emmanuel. We will hear it, as I've already indicated, from the Gospel of Matthew. Now, listen to what the Old Testament prophet Isaiah has to say about God with us. Again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz. Ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or high as heavens. But Ahaz said, I will not ask. I will not put the Lord to the test. And he said, Hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary men that you weary God also? Therefore the Lord will give you a sign. Behold, a young woman shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. He shall eat curds and honey when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the child knows how to do that, the land before whose 2 kings you are in dread will be deserted. The Lord will bring upon you and upon your father's house such days as have not come since the days of Ephraim departed from Judah, the king of Assyria. Friends, this is the word of the Lord and the poetry of the faithful. Thanks be to God. Emmanuel, God with us. In our first passage today, it's what gave Joseph the peace that he needed to embrace Mary as his wife and to take responsibility for his soon-to-be son. You see, then, as is the case for so many Christ followers today, people believed that life was in breath. It was not only a sign of the Spirit, it was a sign of life. The early church never understood life to begin at conception, but rather they understood the Genesis stories of creation about God's breathing life into human beings. They understood that to be the teaching about when life begins. With breath. And so when Jesus was born, when Jesus took his first breath, he became this promised sign, Emmanuel, God with us. And that knowledge of what was about to happen gave Joseph immense peace. A peace that would eventually be personified in the person of the Christ child. Now, in contrast, Ahaz knew no peace in this life. It was certainly available to him, but unlike Joseph, Ahaz was just a different kind of guy. The young 20-year-old king of Judah, who reigned late in the 8th century BC, he had other ambitions, other desires that ruled his life. And as a result, well, he is not remembered as one of the southern kingdom's greatest monarchs. Isaiah called him to trust in God and to be mindful that God was with him. But Ahaz doubted and questioned and refused to believe this prophet from God. As a result, he never came to experience real peace. He believed in God and was afraid of God, which is why in the passage he did not want to put God to the test. But he did not put his beliefs into action. He was more interested in trusting the military might of his surrounding neighbors, particularly the Assyrians. He loved the prestige of their empire, the glamour, the greatness of his powerful neighbors. And so over his 16-year reign, he continually sought to mimic whatever it was he saw them doing, even going so far as to adopt their practice of child sacrifice, offering his own son to the pagan god Moloch. That's why simply believing is never enough. Because beliefs don't always alter our behavior. They should, but they don't. And we see that in the life of Ahaz. He sided with the wrong people again and again. And as a result, he never knew God's peace. He never knew God with us. Certainly not the way Joseph did. Instead, Ahaz lived in constant fear and turmoil. And in the end, well, again, let me simply say that the rulers who followed him were continually trying to undo all the evil that he had wrought upon the nation of Judah. So Joseph and Ahaz provide for us a great contrast in what it means to comprehend the presence of God and to experience the peace that kind of comprehension brings to our lives. And we see that as Joseph moves forward towards the end of his days. While Ahaz was continually afraid of losing power and being overrun by his enemies. Joseph came to experience a peace that allowed him to embrace both Mary and the Christ child, and all that would eventually confront their family. But Ahaz knew no peace. And so he was continually, frantically, and frenetically trying to control his future. It's a great contrast, and one that is boldly put before us on this first Sunday in Advent, as we light the peace candle on our Advent wreaths. Are you more like Joseph or Ahaz? Have you experienced the peace of God's presence in your life? If so, how might you grow that peace that comes from God? If not, how might you begin to experience some of it? What might we all do to move us closer to this peace that is Emmanuel, God with us, during this Advent and Christmas season? For me, it comes with snow. Nothing allows me to experience the peace of this season like a white Christmas. It brings me into communion with God by bringing me into communion with the universe. It reminds me of God's holy presence in me, in us, all around us, all the time. And you know what? Over the years, I've come to see that even if flakes don't fly on Christmas, the music, the memories, the images of a white Christmas that are all around us this time of year, they all have the capacity to make God's peace a reality. And it's all about communion with the universe. And my heart learning to beat in sync with creation. In his book, Reflections on the Art of Living, noted author and professor Joseph Campbell writes that the purpose of life is to get our heartbeat to match the heartbeat of the universe. Hear that again. The purpose of our lives is to get our heartbeats to match the heartbeat of the universe. Well, that's what snow does for me. In fact, it's what winter does for me. And so perhaps, instead of resisting winter, as so many do, or resenting snow, worse yet, perhaps embracing them might be one of the ways we might begin to find some peace in our days. It's actually what the writer of Ecclesiastes was getting at when they said that there was a time for every season under the heavens. Getting in sync with the seasons of the year, the seasons of our lives, is the best way, one of the best ways for us to find contentment, wholeness, peace. It's what Paul was also trying to tell us when he said in Philippians that he had learned to be content in all things. You see, peace in this life is all about learning to accept what is and finding God's presence regardless of what is going on around us. Now I know some just don't like snow or winter for that matter. I have two sons who hate it, who never want to ever go north of the Mason-Dixon line. But I recently heard someone say, there is no bad weather only bad clothing. So, put on a down jacket. Find some hat and gloves. Wrap a scarf around your neck and join me in considering a walk in a winter wonderland. Not necessarily literally, but figuratively, as a way to experience the peace that is Advent. Micah Mortali is the founder of the Kripalu School of Mindful Outdoor Leadership and the author of a book titled Rewilding. And in an interview that my daughter did with him 2 weeks ago, he spoke about the importance of what is called wintering. And this Advent season, as we run with this theme of white Christmas, it's what I'd like you to consider. Wintering. Because I'm becoming more and more convinced that this is how we experience not only the peace of God that is Advent, but the hope and love and joy of God that are also so central to this Advent season. Wintering, according to Mortali, is about this: trying to get our heartbeats to match the heartbeats of the universe. He's right on track with Campbell. He wants us to learn to match our heartbeats with the heartbeat of the universe, which I would contend is the heartbeat of God. And so to do this, Mortali and his family have one night each week, during the month of December, where they attempt to truly follow the rhythm of the day. And so when it gets dark, they light an oil lamp so they can cook and have their dinner. And then they light candles in order to read or do homework. They don't use any electronics. They've all agreed to that. And instead, as the night settles in, they allow their bodies to slow down so that their heartbeats might, even if just for a small moment, for a short period of time, so that those heartbeats might match the heartbeat of the universe. And get this. He says, when we begin to yawn, we go to bed. We don't look at the time, we just go to bed. Now, if you're older like me and worry about going to bed too early because then you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, he says, don't worry about things like that. Get up, have a glass of water or read, and then just go back to bed and experience what used to be called a second sleep. And just see how helping your body tune into the rhythm of creation might bring you some peace. Peace that is of God. Shannon and I are going to try it this week. And I encourage you to do the same. Take a breath. Slow down. Let your heart begin to beat with the heartbeat of creation and experience God in a whole new way. Church, the peace that is of God, the peace that is Advent, is about integration. Just as the snow falls and covers the leaves of autumn, so that they might break down and eventually become nourishment for the earth, so that spring and new life might eventually return, so too do our bodies, our minds, our hearts. So too do they need similar experiences. We need to learn to embrace and integrate all the different seasons of our lives. We need to learn to find contentment in all of our circumstances by confidently knowing that even in the harshest of winters, God is with us. Looking at the weather forecast for the week ahead, well, it's going to get cold here on Thursday. It doesn't look like we're going to see any flakes falling from the heavens anytime soon. But I'm remaining hopeful that this year, not only will the Bills win the Super Bowl, but that we here in Alexandria might experience a white Christmas. So let's take some time during these busy days to try and allow our heartbeats to match the heartbeat of the universe. Let's stop resisting all that is around us and learn to find peace in everything. Let's embrace the joys and the challenges, the successes and the failures, the laughter and the sorrow. For through all the seasons of life, God is with us. And God's peace, a peace that truly does pass all understanding, can and will sustain us all. And to this God be all glory and honor today and throughout this season. And all God's people agreed and said, Amen. Friends, have a wonderful week, and I will see you right back here next Sunday. Until then, peace be with you.